Dogs look up at us, cats look down on us, but pigs look us in the eyes and see us as equals. Winston Churchill. Perhaps no other domesticated animal is more looked down upon than the pig, a symbol of gluttony, excess, impulse, and filth. Just listen to them. Great for meditation, right? But perhaps the negative reputation the pig has acquired is undeserved. They have continued to be an important source of food for cultures around much of the world, with some significant exceptions, and they're also fairly social and intelligent creatures, perhaps the most intelligent domesticated animal of all. This even-toed, hoofed creature is not so much a species, but rather a domesticated subspecies of the wild boar, an omnivorous animal native to the temperate regions of the Eurasian landmass, across nearly all of Europe, parts of the Middle East, North Africa, the Indian subcontinent, and much of East Asia, aside from some alpine regions like Tibet and the frigid portions of Siberia. They're also an invasive species in many other regions, such as the southern United States, as well as the southern cone of Latin America. They are also invasive to northern Australia, as Australia just can't take a break when it comes to invasive species. Such a massive range of both native and invasive feral populations speaks to an incredible adaptability across a wide range of climates, biomes, food sources, and human pressures. Many people may use the word pig as an insult to those who are fat, rude, and gross, but if anything, it should describe those who are adaptive and resilient. Boars and pigs alike are some of the best contenders evolution has up to offer, along there with sharks, cats, and ants. Pigs have oftentimes garnered a reputation as being lazy fat asses, but that's not exactly true, and certainly not true for boars. Boars are not to be played with in the wild, as they're fast, their bite force is pretty powerful, more powerful than you'd think, and they've even been known to kill a few people with their tusks, granted it is fairly rare. They're also a social animal, known to form cooperative bonds, and are roughly more intelligent than dogs. They can also be trained. However, they're not as smart as, say, dolphins and apes, and probably not as smart as, say, parrots or octopi either. However, I would argue that what makes the pig so powerful as an evolutionary player, along with their domesticated counterpart, is oftentimes what makes them so repulsive to us: their eating habits. While goats will eat the freshest hay and leaves, pigs will eat just about anything organic. A garbage dump is a buffet, to the point where literal buffets oftentimes send their food waste to pig farms. There are even instances when pigs have been used to eat human feces. Some of the human shit probably came from eating pork in the first place. It all comes full circle. Now that I've disgusted you enough, it's worth pointing out what the emotion of disgust truly is. The fact that pigs have such a very high tolerance for disgust probably means that they have a very strong immune system. Their bodies can deal with toxins that our bodies simply cannot. Disgust, after all, is an evolutionary mechanism to keep us safe from toxins. Pigs, however, can store toxins in their fat to the point that some can even eat venomous and poisonous prey. This flexibility and indiscriminatory diet allows pigs to adapt to a wide variety of places, as nearly anything can be found as a food source. This combination, with a keen sense of smell along with their snouts, which are useful for both sniffing and digging, is great for not only eating tubers and roots, but also for finding prey animals. Digging is also helpful as they don't have sweat glands, and they need to dig up and lay in the mud to cool down. This swallowing behavior may act as sunscreen, as well as a way of driving away insects. Granted, the wallowing behavior and their diets have contributed to pigs being seen as dirty, given that, well, they're wallowing around in the dirt. To be fair, it's mostly our fault, as the natural environment of the pig would usually be in the forest, with trees providing them with shade to avoid getting sunburnt. But food and shelter are not the only things about pigs that are, well, piggish. Sex is another, as they breed very easily and are very non-discriminatory when it comes to getting laid, pretty much as non-discriminatory as they are with their dinner. They're ready to breed within half a year, and the sows are pregnant for around 4 months. This amounts to 2 to 3 litters per year, and each litter has around 10 piglets. Despite being associated with temperate regions around the world, the wild boar traces its origins to Southeast Asia, and through its aforementioned ecological advantages was able to migrate and take over a wide swath of ecosystems. This would eventually cross paths with another globe-trotting species, the human. You might have heard of them. The first complex civilizations of humanity emerged in the Middle East, where pigs were first domesticated. It's rather amusing that the Middle East is now the region with the lowest pork consumption due to Islam and to a lesser extent Judaism. There are even remains of pigs dating back over 10,000 years ago in Greece and around 8,000 years ago in China. This would foreshadow the fact that Europe and East Asia would be the biggest consumers of pork in the future. The pigs of Europe most likely were bought and traded from the Middle East and later bred with European wild populations, while the ones in China were probably separately domesticated a bit later. As boars transitioned into domesticated pigs, populations would become less aggressive, fatter, and have floppier ears, shorter snouts, and rather pathetic tusks that would eventually fade away. Despite being such a reliable food source and easy to domesticate, some cultures would eventually make eating pork forbidden. One indicator that archaeologists have used to set up the emergence of Jewish identities separate from various other Canaanite groups mentioned in the Bible was a lack of pig remains at certain points in the archaeological record. At other points in the archaeological record, Canaanite people in the region of what are now Syria and Lebanon, long before Islam, abandoned the consumption of pigs as well. For a variety of complex factors, various Semitic peoples stopped eating pork. In Judaism, pork is prohibited as pigs do not chew chud. Chewing chud is what cows do. They quasi-regurgitate their food and re-chew it to digest the tough cellulose from the grass. Pigs, unlike cows, only have one stomach, so they don't do that. This sounds rather arbitrary, but I'm not going to question the Old Testament God because he has a bad temper, and I'm not fond of getting killed. The pork taboo would not gain a significant traction among Christians, despite Christianity starting off as an offshoot of Judaism. St. Paul, a Jew who was Hellenized by Greek influence, was far more worldly than your typical Jew at the time, and he wanted to make Christianity more universal. So he did this by appealing to Gentiles, reducing some of the esoteric restrictions on diets among other Jewish customs that non-Jews oftentimes found unappealing, such as not eating pork, as well as making circumcision mandatory. Many people like to keep their bacon and their foreskin. I'm the only YouTuber who has ever mentioned those two words in the same sentence. At least I hope I am. There are some branches of Christianity, like the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, which also prohibit pork, as they've had more influence from Judaism and they adopted Christianity before the Romans did. The most prominent Western branch to prohibit pork would be Seventh-day Adventists who subscribe to Jewish kosher and food laws. However, it would truly be the rise of Islam that would place the biggest damper on pork consumption worldwide. According to Islam, quote, "I do not find in what has been revealed to me anything forbidden for anyone who wants to eat unless it's carrion, outpoured blood, and the flesh of swine, all of which are unclean." This was a passage from the Quran. The most obvious reason for this is that pigs are seen as, well, unclean. There are some Jewish roots in the Islamic perspective, as both of them are Abrahamic religions, and many Bedouins believed themselves to be the descendants of Ishmael, Abraham's first son, and Isaac's older brother, and thereby Jewish customs were adapted by some Muslims to some degree. To this day, pork consumption is very low in Muslim-majority countries. However, some Muslim-majority countries do produce pork for their Christian minority populations, such as the Christians of Lebanon, and in Indonesia, which is an Islamic majority country, they do have pork for their Chinese minority. Some Muslim nations with expat communities that are very large, like the UAE, will also have enclosed sections in the grocery store for pork. When I lived in Dubai, there would be signs at grocery stores hidden behind shelves that would say, "Pork for non-Muslims." Now, keep in mind, some Muslim populations in East Asia, like Albanians, are far more likely to eat pork as they've been more secularized. Hinduism is not an Abrahamic religion, and it doesn't explicitly prohibit pork like it does with beef. However, it doesn't exactly praise the smoky bacon flavor either. Given that Hinduism has a strong emphasis on ritual purity and the separation of the ethereal mystical world over the ugliness of the material world, an animal that wallows around in the mud and eats garbage doesn't exactly bode well. On top of that, in early modern times, India was ruled by the Muslim Mughal Empire before the arrival of the British. These Muslim rulers did prohibit pork, and many of their Hindu subjects followed. To this day, pork is not widely consumed by Hindus in favor of chicken, lamb, and even more so a vegetarian diet, as Hinduism is less anthropomorphic as Abrahamic religions and more in tune with, say, animal welfare. Now, there have also been various reasons anthropologists have been giving for why the pork taboo exists. The most obvious reason is that God told you so. But there had to be a reason why God told them so. Well, the reason might be that pigs are gross, and they're more likely to cause disease. Disgust, after all, is meant to keep you safe from things that can cause you diseases. Before the scientific method, it would be totally reasonable to assume that pigs are more likely to get you sick, given that their diets are pretty gross and their bathing habits are almost as gross. After all, most of the dietary restrictions in the Old Testament refer to scavengers like crows, vultures, and even a ban on shrimp. In fact, there's even a Wikipedia page for pig toilet, referring to a method of feeding, which makes me realize why some people would take a pass on the baby back ribs. Nonetheless, epidemiological studies show that pigs are not more likely to get you sick. The two most deadly diseases for humans have been malaria from mosquitoes and smallpox from cattle. So scientifically, the targeting of pork doesn't really make any sense. Cooked pork is not any more likely to get you sick than any other type of cooked meat. Nonetheless, uncooked pork is likely to give you roundworms and tapeworms that, say, chicken and beef is probably less likely to cause. However, uncooked fish can cause you tapeworms, and that doesn't have the same taboo. Others argue that Semitic peoples eventually abandoned pork to distinguish themselves from other people groups who weren't Semitic. Again, it's very difficult to verify these claims. In more recent years, some people have even made secular arguments against consuming pork due to their high levels of intelligence and their social abilities, in contrast to, say, cows, sheep, and chickens. While the Middle East, the birthplace of the domestic pig, is not a fan of their quasi-invention, other cultures have embraced the porkers, namely China and the West. To this day, Chinese consume more pork than anyone else, and the pigs have played a profound impact on their culture and cuisine, even becoming zodiac icons for the Chinese calendar. The myth tells a story of the Jade Emperor who set up a race with 12 animals, including the epic beasts like the dragon and the tiger, as well as the pig. Due to its laziness and gluttony, the pig took a snack break halfway through, and for that reason, it ended up arriving 12 out of 12 spots, the last animal on the zodiac. After the year of the pig, the cycle starts over, with the gold medalist returning to the first place winner, the rat. Pork is more popular than beef in China due to them being easy to shelter, feed, and breed, and the fat is considered to be very appetizing. However, it would be the Europeans who had spread pork further throughout the world. Pork proved to be easy to cure, pickle, smoke into ham, bacon, chorizo, and other products that would be helpful for getting protein at a time before refrigeration and avoiding sickness caused by rotting meat. To this day, pork is commonly used for sausages, oftentimes by using the intestines of pigs for casing, which is rather, let's just say, unappetizing. Forget about that while you're eating bratwurst. Some varieties of sausages mix pork with beef and veal. Others, like the hot dog, mix pork with rat rectum, sodium nitrites, and mystery compost. To this day, pork meat is usually considered to be disproportionately used for breakfast food in the West. Europeans would arrive in the Americas, and the Spanish brought the pigs with them, and they dropped them off on various islands. This would result in the famous swimming pigs of the Bahamas. After all, these pigs could easily survive on their own and breed like rabbits, providing the Spanish with food later on. This, however, proved to be an ecological disaster today, as pigs are known to destroy rooted plants and outcompete native species. Not only in the southern United States, but most notably around the southern cone of South America and northern Australia. The first tacos, after all, were invented when Cortez, the conqueror of the Aztecs, combined pig pork that they took with them from the Old World with the corn tortillas that the natives gave them from the New World. To this day, pork remains one of the most popular sources of protein in Latin America. It's also global. The global economy industrialized and many people moved off of subsistence farming and into the cities. Large-scale commercial factory farming has opened up to produce pork on a massive scale, at the cost of terrible living conditions for the pigs. Cramped enclosures, excess density, excessive use of antibiotics, contamination from their crap, etc. have contributed to the controversy, especially given the fact that these animals have some fairly good degree of social intelligence. However, there are also some areas where pig farming is more sustainable than others, given that it oftentimes results in less food waste, given that pigs will eat anything. However, the story of humanity's interactions with pigs is not just one based upon consumption. Female pigs will be used to forage for truffles, as the scent of truffles is very similar to the scent of the male pig's testes. However, because pigs are, well, pigs, they tend to eat anything, and they'll eat those expensive truffles, which is why dogs have by and large taken over their job. In China, pigs have been used to fertilize fields. Pigs eat a lot and they shit a lot. Throughout much of history, pigs and boars have also been depicted in art. Boars are oftentimes seen as ferocious, while pigs not so much. Tales like The Three Little Pigs, Charlotte's Web, and movies like Babe, Pig in the City presented pigs in a more positive light. And today, some people have even adopted some pigs as their pets. Perhaps this trend is setting up the right direction. Pigs have unintentionally sacrificed their own flesh and their lives for our consumption. They provided calories that have been needed to sustain our civilizations. This has made them one of the most populous species on the planet, very successful when it comes to quantity, but when it comes to the quality of their lives, not so much, not at all. Perhaps we need to treat these creatures with a little bit more respect.